The signal. The universe had been silent for so long that Commander Marcus Chen almost didn't believe his ears when the pattern emerged from the cosmic static. He sat alone in the observation deck of Station Omega-7, humanity's furthest listening post, positioned at the edge of the solar system where Earth's influence faded into the vast unknown. The coffee in his mug had gone cold 3 hours ago, but Marcus hadn't noticed. His attention was fixed entirely on the rhythmic pulses appearing on his screen. For 12 years, humanity had been broadcasting messages into space, hoping for any sign of intelligent life. They had received nothing but silence in return. Scientists had begun to wonder if Earth was truly alone, a single spark of consciousness in an infinite darkness. But now, at 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time, everything changed. The signal wasn't random cosmic noise or the death cry of a distant star. It had structure, pattern, and most importantly, it repeated every 17 minutes with mathematical precision. Marcus adjusted the receivers and ran the signal through every filter and decoder the station possessed. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. After 2 hours of analysis, the translation matrix finally found a match. Words began appearing on his screen, first slowly, then in a flood. The message was in a language the computer had never seen before. Yet somehow the universal mathematical constants embedded within allowed for translation. The words that appeared made Marcus's blood run cold. "We are the Zalani. Our world burns. Our children die. The Vorthak Empire consumes all. We have sent this message to 1,000 worlds. You are our only response. Please, if anyone hears this, we need help. We are located in the Kepler 442 system. We have 7 cycles before extinction. Please." Marcus immediately activated the emergency communication protocol, sending the message directly to Earth Command. Within minutes, every major government, military leader, and scientific authority on Earth was aware of the transmission. The quiet morning on Earth suddenly erupted into controlled chaos as humanity faced its first real contact with alien life. And that contact was a desperate cry for help. President Sarah Mitchell stood before the United Nations Assembly 6 hours later. The room was packed with representatives from every nation, their faces showing a mixture of excitement, fear, and uncertainty. Behind her, the alien message played on massive screens, translated into every Earth language. The assembly had been called for an emergency session, and the weight of the decision before them was unlike anything humanity had faced before. General David Park, Earth's military commander, presented the tactical assessment. The Kepler 442 system was 64 light-years away. With humanity's newest faster-than-light drive technology, still experimental and only tested on unmanned probes, the journey would take 3 months. They had no intelligence about enemy capabilities, no understanding of alien combat tactics, and no guarantee their weapons would even be effective against an alien threat. From a military perspective, it was absolute madness to commit Earth's forces to such an unknown conflict. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading xenobiologist, offered a different perspective. The mathematical structure of the Zalani message showed a species of remarkable intelligence. Their cry for help had been broadcast using quantum entanglement principles that humanity had only recently begun to understand. If Earth could save them, the potential for technological and cultural exchange could advance human civilization by centuries. But more than that, she argued, this was a test of humanity's character. Would Earth be the species that turned away from those in need? Or would they be the ones who answered when no one else would? The debate raged for hours. Some representatives argued that Earth needed to protect itself first, that rushing into an unknown conflict could bring destruction to humanity's doorstep. Others pointed out that if Earth didn't help, and the Zalani were destroyed, humans would have to live with that choice forever. The Chinese representative spoke passionately about the duty of the strong to protect the weak. The American representative talked about the precedent this would set for humanity's future in the cosmos. Finally, an elderly representative from Kenya, Ambassador James Mwangi, stood to speak. His voice was quiet, but the room fell silent to hear him. He told a story from his childhood, about a village that heard cries for help from neighboring settlements being attacked by raiders. Some villages chose to hide to protect only themselves, but his village chose differently. They gathered their warriors and went to help, even though they were outnumbered and outgunned. They saved hundreds of lives that day, And from that act of courage, an alliance was born that protected the entire region for generations. When the vote was called, it wasn't even close. 187 nations voted to send aid. 12 abstained. None voted against. Humanity had made its choice. Earth would answer the call. The mobilization that followed was unlike anything in human history. For the first time, Earth's militaries united under a single banner. The Earth Defense Fleet, which had been a modest collection of patrol vessels and research ships, suddenly became humanity's spear thrust into the unknown. Every spacefaring nation contributed ships, weapons, and personnel. Old rivalries were set aside as Russian engineers worked alongside American technicians. Chinese strategists planned with European commanders, and African pilots trained with South American crews. Captain Alexandra Rivera was given command of humanity's flagship, the ESS Perseverance. She was a veteran of the Mars colonial conflicts, one of the few humans with actual combat experience in space, though nothing on the scale of what they were preparing for. As she watched the fleet assembly from her bridge, she felt both pride and trepidation. 47 warships, the entire combined might of Earth, were preparing to jump into the unknown to save people they had never met from an enemy they didn't understand. The weapons laboratories on Luna worked around the clock, adapting human military technology for space warfare. Nuclear warheads were modified for zero-gravity deployment. Kinetic bombardment systems were upgraded with new targeting algorithms. Plasma weapons, still in prototype phase, were rushed into production. Most importantly, humanity's greatest military minds worked on tactics. They studied every piece of information they could extract from the Zalani message, trying to understand what kind of enemy could threaten an entire species with extinction. Dr. Tanaka's team managed to extract more information from the quantum signatures in the message. The Zalani described the Vorthak as conquerors who viewed other species as resources to be harvested. They didn't just destroy worlds. They stripped them of all biological and technological assets first, leaving nothing but barren rocks in their wake. They had already consumed 17 civilizations, each one crying for help that never came. The Zalani were to be number 18. As the fleet prepared for departure, millions of people gathered at spaceports around the world to see them off. The crews aboard the ships were volunteers, every single one. When the call had gone out for personnel, the response had been overwhelming. Veterans came out of retirement. Young soldiers eager to make a difference signed up in droves, and specialists from every field offered their expertise. They knew they might not return, but they went anyway. The night before departure, President Mitchell addressed the fleet and the world. Her words were broadcast to every corner of Earth and recorded for history. She spoke of humanity's long journey from caves to stars, of the dreams of generations who looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone was out there. She spoke of courage, not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. She spoke of what it meant to be human, to hear a cry for help and answer it, not because it was safe or easy, but because it was right. As dawn broke over Earth on departure day, the fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives in perfect synchronization. In a flash of light that was visible from the planet's surface, humanity's answer to the universe disappeared into the void, racing toward a distant star where strangers were dying and hope was fading. Behind them, Earth held its breath, waiting to learn what would become of their brave volunteers who had chosen to fight for people they had never met, simply because someone had asked for help. The response. 3 months of traveling through the quantum void tested every soul aboard the Earth fleet. The faster-than-light journey was not like the smooth sailing of science fiction stories. Reality bent and twisted around the ships, causing disorientation and nausea among the crews. Commander Chen, who had first received the signal, was now aboard the Perseverance's chief communications officer. He spent the journey refining the translation protocols, preparing for the moment they would meet the Zalani face to face. When the fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the sight that greeted them confirmed their worst fears. Debris fields that had once been planets drifted through space. Massive Vorthak harvester ships, each the size of a small moon, methodically stripped resources from shattered worlds. The enemy fleet was enormous. Over 200 vessels of varying sizes, all bearing the same ominous black hull design that seemed to absorb light itself. Captain Rivera ordered the fleet to hold position behind a large asteroid field while they gathered intelligence. The Zalani homeworld was still intact, but barely. Energy readings showed massive bombardment damage across 3 continents. The planet's once blue oceans had turned gray from ash and debris. Shield generators flickered weakly around a few remaining cities, but it was clear they wouldn't last much longer. The first contact with the Zilani came through a weak transmission from the planet's surface. When the video feed connected, the bridge crew saw their first alien life form. The Zilani were humanoid but taller, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between blue and green hues. Their leader, who introduced herself as Prime Coordinator Valara, had large eyes that conveyed exhaustion and fading hope. When she saw the human fleet, those eyes widened in disbelief. Through the translator, Valara spoke with a voice filled with emotion. She explained that her people had never believed anyone would come. They had resigned themselves to extinction, teaching their children final songs and recording last messages for a universe that didn't care. The arrival of the humans, these strange beings from a distant world, had rekindled something they thought lost forever, but she also warned them about the Vorthak's power. Their technology was centuries ahead, their shields nearly impenetrable, their weapons capable of breaking planets. Captain Rivera asked for all tactical data the Zilani could provide. What she learned should have made her despair. The Vorthak ships were faster, better armed, and better defended than anything Earth had. In a conventional battle, the human fleet would be annihilated in minutes. But Rivera smiled as she reviewed the data, because she had no intention of fighting a conventional battle. Humans had not become Earth's dominant species by fighting fair. The battle plan that emerged from the human command staff was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the long-range energy duels that characterized most space combat, humans would use their inferior position as an advantage. Lieutenant Colonel James Roberts, a veteran of guerrilla warfare on Earth, proposed using the debris fields as cover for hit-and-run attacks. Commander Lisa Wong suggested they could turn the Vorthak's own harvesting equipment against them. Captain Dmitry Volkov wanted to use nuclear mines in unexpected ways, but it was Sergeant Maria Santos, a demolitions expert from Brazil, who proposed the key strategy. The Vorthak were methodical, predictable. They followed patterns in their harvesting, never deviating from their established procedures. They were so confident in their superiority that they had no contingency plans for chaos. Humans, Santos argued, were experts at chaos. They should embrace it, weaponize it, and use it to turn the enemy's strength into weakness. The attack began at what the Vorthak considered their safest moment, during a shift change when their crews were rotating. 12 human ships, painted black and running silent, had spent 6 hours drifting through debris fields to get close to the harvester vessels. When they struck, it was with a violence that shocked both enemy and ally. Nuclear warheads detonated inside the harvesters' collection bays. Kinetic rounds punched through processing centers. Plasma charges melted critical systems. The Vorthak response was swift but confused. Their commanders had never faced an enemy that attacked from within minimum safe distances. Human ships flew so close to Vorthak vessels that the enemy's own weapons couldn't target them without risking friendly fire. When the Vorthak tried to establish battle lines, human ships refused to engage, instead disappearing into debris fields only to emerge somewhere else entirely. The second wave of attacks targeted communication arrays. Without coordination, the massive Vorthak fleet began to falter. Individual commanders made different decisions, their movements becoming erratic. Into this confusion, Captain Rivera led the main assault. The Perseverance and 20 other ships executed a maneuver that would later be called the Terra Charge. They accelerated to near light speed directly at the Vorthak command vessel, firing everything they had while spinning in unpredictable patterns. The Vorthak commander, Supreme Harvester Korthax, had conquered 17 civilizations. He had never lost a battle, never faced effective resistance. As he watched human ships deliberately ram his escort vessels, using their own deaths to clear a path for others, he experienced something new. It was fear. These humans didn't fight to win. They fought to make sure their enemy lost, and there was a terrible difference between the two. The battle reached its climax when 3 human ships, all heavily damaged, performed what seemed like a suicidal charge at the main harvester. The Vorthak concentrated their fire, confident they would destroy the attacking vessels. But the ships were empty, rigged as massive bombs. When they detonated, the explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new star born from human sacrifice and determination. The harvester's destruction sent shockwaves through the Vorthak fleet, both literal and psychological. What followed could barely be called a battle. It was a rout. The Vorthak, faced with an enemy that embraced destruction that turned death into a weapon, began to retreat, but humans gave them no respite. Every fleeing ship was hunted, harassed, and destroyed. The message was clear. Those who preyed on the weak would find no mercy from humanity. As the last Vorthak vessel jumped to FTL, critically damaged and venting atmosphere, they carried with them a warning to their empire. The humans were coming. The liberation of the Zalani homeworld was complete, but the cost had been severe. 18 human ships were destroyed, over 2,000 crew members lost. But they had achieved the impossible. They had defeated a force 10 times their size, saved an entire species from extinction, and announced humanity's presence on the galactic stage in a way that would echo through the ages. Prime Coordinator Valara stood with Captain Rivera on the bridge of the Perseverance, looking down at her saved world. Through the translator, she asked a question that would be repeated across the galaxy in the coming years. Why did Earth answer when no one else would? Rivera's answer was simple but profound, because that's what humans do. When someone calls for help, we answer. When bullies threaten the innocent, we stand up. When the universe asks who will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, humanity says we will. The journey home took 4 months, longer due to damaged ships and rescued Zalani refugees. When the fleet returned to Earth, they found a changed world. The entire planet watched as the battered ships entered Earth orbit. The crews were welcomed as heroes, but more importantly, Earth was welcomed into a larger community. The Zalani were the first of many species to establish contact, all having heard of the small blue planet whose people answered a stranger's cry for help. In the years that followed, Earth became known throughout the galaxy not as conquerors or traitors, but as protectors. The Battle of Kepler 442 was studied in military academies across 100 worlds, not just for its tactical innovations, but for what it represented. It was proof that sometimes courage mattered more than technology, that determination could overcome superior numbers, that a species barely able to leave their own solar system could change the fate of the galaxy simply by choosing to care. The memorial built for the fallen became a pilgrimage site for many species. Its inscription, written in both human and Zalani script, read simply, "They went to the stars not seeking glory or gain, but because strangers needed help. They did not know those they saved, but they went anyway." This is what it means to be human. And across the galaxy, whenever tyrants threatened the weak, whenever empires grew too bold, whenever hope seemed lost, a message would spread through quantum channels and whispered communications. Call Earth, the humans will come. One call for help is enough. Earth's armies will rise to answer.